Today, we're diving deep, literally, into the surprisingly complex world of ship anchors. And I think you're going to be shocked by what you're about to find out. So, what if I told you that a massive 20-ton anchor can't actually stop a ship at all? And that the real secret to holding a gigantic vessel in place has almost nothing to do with how much the anchor itself weighs? You know that classic hook-shaped anchor, right? The one you see in cartoons, on tattoos? Well, that image is fundamentally misleading. The whole idea of an anchor just digging into the seafloor like a tent peg in your backyard, it completely misses the point of how these incredible systems actually work. Okay, here's the core secret. An anchor is basically useless if you pull it straight up. In fact, it's designed to fail that way, otherwise you'd never get it back. The real magic only happens when it's pulled sideways, horizontally. That sideways drag is what lets its blades, they're called flukes, dig deep into the seabed. But that begs a pretty big question, right? How on earth do you guarantee a perfectly horizontal pull from a ship that's floating way up on the surface? Well, the answer, and the real unsung hero of this entire story, is the anchor chain. And listen, this is not just some big, dumb rope. It's a masterpiece of physics. Its incredible weight is what transforms all the chaotic forces hitting the ship into a steady, gentle, horizontal tug on the anchor, way down on the seafloor. And the scale here, it's just mind-blowing. A supertanker's full anchor chain can weigh over 100 tons. That's heavier than 10 full-grown elephants. Get this, each individual link can weigh over 120 kilograms, more than an adult person, and its entire job is just to hang there correctly. Okay, so this brings us to our first key idea, a really cool physics concept called the catenary. That's just the fancy name for the natural U-shaped curve that any heavy chain or cable makes under its own weight. Think about the cables on a suspension bridge. That sag, that's the secret sauce. It acts as a giant, super heavy shock absorber. When the ship gets hit by wind or waves, it first has to lift tons and tons of that heavy chain, and all that effort absorbs the energy and keeps the pull at the bottom perfectly horizontal. And that leads us right into our second key concept, scope. As you can see, it's the ratio of how much chain you let out compared to the depth of the water. It's the geometry of anchoring. And this simple ratio is often the one thing that decides whether a ship stays put or starts dragging its anchor in a dangerous storm. Looking at this chart, you can really see how this plays out. On a nice calm day, a scope of 5:1 is fine. But in a storm, you want at least an 8:1 ratio, maybe even 10:1. Now think about what that means. In just 100 feet of water, you need to have nearly 1,000 feet of chain out to stay safe. It's incredible. So under normal conditions, the system just works perfectly. You've got that heavy catenary curve sagging beautifully, a good portion of the chain is just resting on the seafloor, and the pull on the anchor is perfectly flat. The ship just sort of swings gently at the end of its massive, heavy leash. But here's the twist. In a major storm, the forces are so extreme that the chain gets pulled completely taut, what sailors call bar tight. In that moment, the shock-absorbing benefit of the catenary is just gone. Now, only one thing is preventing that anchor from being yanked upward and ripped out of the seabed: scope. The sheer length of the chain creates such a shallow angle that the pull has to stay horizontal, even under unbelievable tension. It is pure geometry saving the ship. So we get the physics right, but what does this actually look like on deck? I mean, how do sailors actually handle this massive, dangerous system? As you can see here, dropping anchor isn't about just pushing a button. No, it's a precise mechanical dance. First, they have to take the strain off the chain stopper, which is basically a giant deadbolt holding everything. Then, the whole load gets transferred to a really powerful brake. Only then can they disconnect the motor and let the anchor drop. And even then, it's a controlled fall, not a free fall. And racing the anchor is just as methodical, just in reverse. That powerful motor has to haul up not just the anchor itself, but all of that incredibly heavy chain, link by painful link. Once it's all the way up, that chain stopper is engaged again, locking everything securely in place and taking the enormous load off the machinery for the journey ahead. Of course, all this amazing physics and engineering means absolutely nothing if the anchor can't get a good grip. The seabed is everything. Mud, sand, and clay are fantastic because the flukes can dig in deep and hold on tight. But rock or thick seaweed, that's a sailor's nightmare. The flukes can't get a grip, and the anchor will just drag. A multi-million-dollar ship can be put at risk simply because its anchor found a patch of kelp instead of sand. This brings up a question I hear a lot. What about ships in the middle of the ocean? Well, the simple answer is they don't anchor. That's a different process called mooring. Anchoring, as we've seen, uses the ship's own gear, and it's temporary. Mooring is when a ship ties up to permanent infrastructure, like massive concrete blocks on the seabed. So those ships you see waiting way out at sea, they're moored, not anchored. And here's the most beautiful part of all this. Once you really see the catenary curve, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere. It's in the elegant sag of suspension bridge cables, it's in the power lines hanging outside your window, it's the gentle curve of a hammock, or even the necklace you're wearing. It's the exact same physics at work, just playing out on a different scale. So the classic anchor image, it's a lie. It's not about a simple hook. It's about a beautiful, elegant system of weight and geometry working together. And the exact same principle that uses a 100-ton chain to hold a tanker steady in a storm is what lets you relax in a backyard hammock. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other elegant physics are hiding in plain sight, quietly holding our world together?